Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. As Anika said, my name is Deepak Saini, and I'm very honored to be speaking in front of you all here today. I think this is a perfect day for my topic. Today is January 30th. We've just started a new year and a new decade. So naturally, it's a time of reflection and also a time of proflection, the year ahead of us, the year in front of us. So my birthday was January 7th, just a couple weeks ago. I just turned 43 years young. A full 40% of the way through my life. So let that sink in for a minute. Do that math in your head. Okay, I'll save you the trouble. At 43 years young and approximately 40% of the way through my life, that means I plan to live to approximately 107.5 years old. Now, when many people, maybe many of you, think about that, think of even being 80 or 90 years old, you may think about being frail, perhaps dementia or some other condition. Maybe being broke, maybe have outlived your money, or generally being reliant on others. I don't think that way. I have a vision of living in my own home, still being productive, still traveling, still stand-up paddleboarding, and God willing, being able to play with my great-grandchildren. Now, I didn't always think this way, but before we get through talk about my transformation, let's talk about playing the long game. Does anybody know what I mean when I talk about playing the long game? Okay, a few head nods here. Okay, great. So by one definition, playing the long game refers to active participation in achieving goals which may take some time. The short game is putting off anything that seems hard for doing something that seems easy or fun. The short game offers visible benefits in the immediate term. The short game is seductive. The long game is the opposite of the short game. It means paying a small price today to make tomorrow easier. If we can do this long enough to see the results, it feeds on itself. Some examples of the short game versus the long game. You could spend every dime you make, or you could save money and invest it for your future, like contributing to your RSP or your 401k or your kid's RESP. You could rent a place to live, or you could buy a house with a mortgage. And I think we have some real estate people in the room here. You could take any interest rate that you're offered, or you could shop around for the best one with a mortgage broker. You could hope for the best, that you live a nice life, or you could buy life and critical insurance. I think we have some insurance people in the room too. You could jump into any job and start making money right away, right after you finish high school, or maybe you don't even finish high school. Or you could go to university and college. You could save a few dollars, or you could have a will professionally prepared, or a power of attorney, and those sorts of things. You could save time and pick up fast food, or you can make a home-cooked meal at home. The education system, estate planning, countless other examples. You get the idea. The long game is usually boring. It seems in this era of instant gratification, Facebook, Instagram, all other social media, technology on demand, everything, on demand food, get rich quick schemes, etc. We're becoming less and less inclined to play the long game. And I see people especially neglecting this in one aspect of their life in particular, their health. In many cases, we have traded convenience for health, or we've traded our health for other aspects of our life that we use as a scorecard, whether it be financial milestones, job titles, or what have you. And I totally get it. I used to be that guy. One of the biggest regrets of my life was when my wife was giving birth to our first child. I brought work to the hospital. For what? I was trying to prove to my boss, trying to get that next promotion, that next title, the next raise. So let me briefly tell you where I got to where I am today. Now, both my parents, who I love very much, were both immigrants to this country, way back in the early 1970s. It was the golden age of fast food, changing farming practices, advertising on TV, and what we now know to be flawed advice coming from the medical community. My parents were introduced to drive-through hamburger joints, pizza, westernized Chinese food, and chicken in a bucket. Both my parents came from meager beginnings, and while I'd be the first to applaud their work ethic to make a life for them and their family here in this new country, through no willing fault of their own, they instilled a mentality of scarcity in me. This did two things. One, it made me work very hard for my goals, grades, making money, etc. Second, it made me always overeat, and more importantly, eat the wrong things. My parents were both involved in the hospitality industry. I was around restaurants, hotels, bars, that sort of thing my entire life. Thus, I ate a lot of restaurant food growing up. Celebrations, achievements, rewards, all centered around food, especially almighty Sunday brunch. You better finish everything on your plate. You better get your money's worth at the buffet, etc. I'm sure we've all heard those things. Maybe we even do that with our kids still today. Bottom line is I ate too much, but more importantly, I ate the wrong things. And maybe some of you can relate. As I was introduced earlier, I struggled with weight my entire life. I can't even remember a time when I wasn't obese or heavy. I was always that chubby kid. From the age of 14 to 18 years old, I gained 100 pounds in those 4 years. At 18 years old, I was morbidly obese. I topped out at 270 pounds. I'm under 6 feet tall, so just imagine, 270 pounds on a 5'11". More than 100 pounds heavier than I am today. I battled illness, chronic bronchitis infections, food sensitivities, you name it. Like clockwork, I was sick 4 to 6 times a year. I suffered from joint pain everywhere, especially my knees and my shoulders and my back. I remember back in my second year of university, my friends and I really got into weight training, really got into strength training. So I got really strong over the next few years, but I was still fat. Just think about that. We men especially, we're supposed to be at our peak physically between the ages of 18 and 24. And while I was physically the strongest I ever was, I could move a lot of weight around the gym, I was the fattest and at my unhealthiest. And mentally, I suffered from brain fog and being tired all the time. In hindsight, I had to work so hard for everything, for every grade, for every report, for anything or try to learn something new. I had to work so hard for it. Now over time, my weight fluctuated, and I remember one summer I was about 250 pounds, and I tried just calorie restriction diet, basically starving myself over the summer, see how it'd go. And guess what? I got down to 225 pounds. That following semester, I had it all back. Eventually I graduated university, got my first real job in the corporate world. So I'm an accountant by profession, so I sat at a desk all day, sat in front of a computer all day. It's free pop and juice at the office, there's treats everywhere all the time. Never ending. I tried all sorts of things over the years, and I lost and gained that same 20 or 25 pounds many times. Fast forward a number of years to 2011. I decided I would take up running as a way to lose weight and stroke that competitive fire in me that had been dormant since I stopped playing football back in high school. And the weight slowly started to come off, but I found I was getting sore joints again, and I was getting sicker more often again. In 2014, I completed my first half marathon, and I had a pretty decent time. I made it my goal to crush that same race the next year. I doubled down. I ramped up my training. And I did some small modifications to my diet. I was getting faster. I was getting skinnier. I was getting sicker. I was burning myself out training for these 10Ks, half marathons, marathons. I had managed to get my weight down to 200 pounds. I was what you would call skinny fat. My arms and my legs were pretty lean, but I still had a lot of weight around my middle. And all that muscle mass I had put on back in university when I did all that strength training, that was all gone. The overall result, I lost some of the weight, but I also broke myself down, both physically and mentally. In March of 2015, I was killing myself training for a half marathon. And one Sunday, after a long run, my knees were all sore, legs were all sore. I bent over to pick up the smallest thing. It was like not even 5 pounds, and I just felt something in my back. My first big mistake was not resting adequately enough and tried to train through that pain for the next couple of weeks. Eventually, I went off to my conventional doctor. He poked and prodded me and diagnosed me on the spot with a bulging disc. Later to be found out, a wrong diagnosis. He gave me some stretches to do and told me to come back in 6 weeks. After 5 weeks and no improvement following the doctor's advice, I went to go see a physiotherapist. First, they told me, stop doing all the stretches the doctor told you. Those are making you worse. Okay. They also found a problem with my hip. So my hip gets out of place, gets misaligned, and it makes my leg length different, which puts a strain on my whole body. So they modified my stretching and gave me some core work to do to strengthen my core. After some slow improvement, the services of a chiropractor were added to my health team. We did this for 8 months with barely any improvement. During this time, I had to withdraw from that half marathon. I was forced to skip a whole golfing season. I finally just got fed up with it all. The system wasn't working for me. I paid out of pocket and went to go get an MRI done myself. The results? I have degenerative disc disease in my L4, L5, L5, S1, so low back. As great as the service was for my physiotherapist and my chiropractor, they couldn't do anything further for degenerative disc disease. So here I was, a seemingly successful guy, climbing the corporate ladder with 2 young kids at home. I could no longer golf, I could no longer run, but the worst thing, the absolute worst thing of it all, is I could not pick up my youngest child, who was a baby at the time. My wife would have to hand her to me while I was sitting down. I couldn't even, her little weight of 8 or 10 pounds, I couldn't even stand up with that amount of weight without pain. I did not recognize it myself at the time, but this probably led to a battle of depression. Now looking in hindsight and knowing more about mental health, I probably was depressed. Unfortunately, the system here in Alberta did not help me for either the chronic sickness or the extreme back pain. Misdiagnosis and poor advice, or lack thereof, wasted 2 years of my health. In hindsight, neither myself nor my doctor were asking the right questions. I eventually ended up taking matters into my own hands, paid thousands of dollars out of my own pocket, did a ton of my own research, and eventually found the solutions I needed. For me, that meant platelet-rich plasma treatments, or PRP, and adopting a low-inflammatory nutrition and lifestyle. Now, I would love to stand in front of you here today and say I'm a miracle story, but things are not always rosy. I still struggle, but I haven't really been sick in the last 6 years. I released that last 40 pounds that I was holding on to in a very short amount of time. I am less inflamed and in a lot less pain. After those short few months, my body came to what I believe is my equilibrium point. I'm plus or minus 160 pounds, the same weight I was before I had that rapid weight gain when I was 14. So below the weight where I started this story. So let's bring it back to where I started here. Playing the long game versus the short game. When you struggle with something for so long, whether it be your weight or other health issues, addiction, money issues, relationship issues, or a whole host of other things, we tend to look short term. If I only lost 10 or 20 pounds, if I only got that promotion, if I only had a new car, if I only won the lottery, if I only had this or that type of relationship, and the list goes on and on. Through media messaging and other powerful influences, we take that pill, we take that job, we date or marry that person, we buy that product or service, we eat or drink those things that make us feel good in the moment. Remember, playing the short game is fun and seductive. When you struggle with weight your whole life, when your grandparents died young, when you couldn't even play with your kids due to back pain, all you think about is making it to the end of the day, making it to the weekend, or living an average life of an average length, hoping maybe we get that promotion, hoping we saved enough for retirement, hoping we don't end up in a facility or a home not knowing our names or recognizing our family members. Is it a surprise that that's how many people live and think? Playing the short game is to have a mentality of scarcity. Why do so many people balk at investing in their own health? They refuse to pay X dollars for this test, or X dollars for this procedure, or X dollars for that food, or X dollars to work with someone to help keep them accountable. They don't think about the minuscule costs of these things in the context of extended health at the end of their life. the extended earning power that if they can work longer, the earning power of not missing days at work or being sick or being hospitalized. I came across a recent study by the World Health Organization, and it showed that high blood pressure and high blood glucose each can take 3 years off your life. Being obese or physically inactive or having high cholesterol can each take 2 years off your life. Being deficient in even one vitamin or mineral can each take a year off your life. And let's be honest here, many people, maybe even some people in this room or watching this presentation, have a combination of many of those things, taking upwards of 10 to 15 years off the end of your life. Even a modest investment in your health works out to literally a few dollars a day. Playing the short game is not just a problem for me and you, it crosses all boundaries of culture, ethnicity, socioeconomic, gender, etc. For myself, the weight loss, the pain reduction, the abundance of energy and vitality I now had, I knew there was more to life to experience and enjoy. It gave me a new outlook on life, to be a fully functioning, highly effective centenarian and beyond. That's right, as I mentioned at the beginning, I plan to live to a healthy 100 years old plus. I plan to see my great grandkids. I'm not planning or seeking to be average. I'm working on being exceptional. I have chosen not to follow the masses, not to follow what is portrayed in the media, not the so-called conventional wisdom, but to play the long game. I think about daily actions and decisions with the goal of living to 100 and beyond. Now, on a macro or global level, I think about how I vote with my dollars, or in other words, how are my purchasing decisions affecting pollution, child labor, suppression, and the like. Now, I'm by no means perfect, and no one who knows me closely would label me an environmentalist. Heck, I worked in oil and gas for 20 years. But I am concerned and I struggle with how I'm contributing to pollution, how I'm contributing to the chemicals being dumped in our soil and our crops, how am I contributing to the treatment of animals, how am I contributing to our water quality. On a personal level, some of the things I weigh include, eating the right foods that power my individual body, avoiding foods that I know harm me, reducing insulin variability, avoiding harmful chemicals in my environment, getting out in nature, getting out in the sun, practicing gratitude daily, practicing meditation, mindfulness, or breath, avoiding harmful junk light, like above me here, keeping my brain active, learning new things, infrared therapy, and the list goes on. Now I know that list seems daunting, especially the global issues where we feel we have no power to make a difference. But the way I look at it, I plan to be here for another 60 plus years. The earth better be in good shape for me, my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. Part of understanding what it takes to play the long game with your health means knowing what your body is trying to tell you and what is embedded in your DNA. Now, I've done all sorts of genetic testing. And guess what? I have the apolipoprotein E gene, or the ApoE variant, which puts me at a slightly greater risk for Alzheimer's disease. And I have family members suffering from Alzheimer's right now. People playing the short game, they don't want to know these kind of things. It's a downer. It can be depressing if you allow it to be. Heck, the average annual out-of-pocket cost taking care of someone with dementia or Alzheimer's is $20,000 a year. I am playing the long game, so I embrace that knowledge such that I can mitigate that disease and others with tactics proven to work and the cutting-edge research coming out all the time. Taking the knowledge of what it took to heal me and make a positive change in myself, I knew I could help others do the same for their own issues. Now, while everyone is unique, I learned that inflammation in its many forms is the root cause of so many health issues. And health is an area where most people are stuck playing the short game. I recognize that you may not see it in yourself, but there is an exceptional person in every one of us. And I've just dedicated the rest of my life to helping people achieve the exceptional person inside of them, to find their true north, their why, their purpose, if you will, the reason for them to get up every day and play the long game for themselves. This is also why I volunteer my time with Brain Mechanics, a not-for-profit organization based right here in Calgary that believes it has found a cure for Alzheimer's. I thank you all very much for listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed it, Again, my gratitude for being given the opportunity to speak here today.